Principal Gorde, and man, time flies. It's hard to believe I'm finishing up my first year here at Lake Elmo. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed serving this community, working with this staff, and working with your children. It's been an amazing experience. We have a number of staff members who are here tonight, and so it will take a little bit of time, but I think I would like to acknowledge the staff members who are here, so you know who they are and can identify with them. Part of an event like this, anytime we're all together, is also a community building opportunity, and I really believe strongly in those opportunities to connect, to talk with people who are like-minded. If you have questions, you can ask those questions. Maybe somebody might have a similar question to yours, and have an opportunity to talk with people. So I think that's always an advantage. So I'm going to go around and try to identify some of those staff members so you're aware of who they are. And so I'll start to my right here, Sarah Anderson, who's a special ed paraprofessional, and next year is going to be our EL paraprofessional classroom teacher. Maybe I'll just have them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Megan Groves, and I'm a 5th grade teacher. Erin Mathis, I'm special ed para.
I'm Brent Hagen, I'm a 6th grade teacher.
I'm Ellen Schmidt, I'm an ELL teacher.
Paula Bruce Hagen, 4th grade teacher.
Jenny Atkinson, math interventionist.
Mary Bolster, 3rd grade.
I'm Christine Hurley. I'm a school psychologist and a parent of a 1st grader here.
Oh, I'm Katie Johnson, Title I Math. And I'm Mariana Castañon, 6th grade.
Angie Weisbrod, I'm reading specialist, and I have 2 kids with disability.
I'm Don Holly, I'm a 6th grade teacher.
There's a few people back there too.
Paul Ayers, I'm physical education.
Wendy Science, kindergarten.
You know, introduce yourselves.
I'm Brent Nosh, I teach English as a second language.
And Mrs. Mock is handing out, Mrs. Mock is teaching 2nd grade and handing out some of the PowerPoint slides that I'm sharing with you. And then also the assistant principal, Mrs. Carrie Witt, is here as well, and she's walking around perhaps coordinating and assisting with some of the child care right now. This is an opportunity to come together because it's an important time for our school district. And in case you don't know, we went out for a levy last fall. It didn't pass. So there are some ramifications as part of not passing a levy. And obviously, one of those significant ones is there are some budget adjustments that are being made. And it's my goal tonight to try to give you a little bit of flavor of what some of those changes are going to be around the budget adjustment process. So you can kind of see and understand that particular piece and know a little bit better about how those decisions impact us, impact Lake Elmo. Also know that the school board has decided not to go for a levy this coming fall, this coming November. It's a presidential election. As many of you are aware, there will be several amendments that will be attached to the ballot. In those kinds of election times, it's very unlikely schools are able to pass the levy. And so the decision was made to give ourselves the 18 months to plan and prepare for passing a levy in the fall of 2013. I also think, and I see some people sort of inquisitive or sort of questioning why the district would do that. It's also, I think, the board and the superintendent's response to the public. And I think the message has been, there's quite a bit of public resources invested in the community, And we really expect you to use those resources in a prudent and efficient way. And I think the school board is taking heed of that message, and they're really doing their very best to apply those principles to the leadership and the fiscal management of the school district. And so as we go from this year to next year, and then also next year to the following year, there also will be some further cuts that you will hear about. So let's get back here tonight and sort of the reason for this. In that kind of a climate, it's particularly important for you to have a sophistication of understanding about the inner workings of Lake Elmo. All right? What's the heart and soul of Lake Elmo? What makes us tick? What makes you excited? What do you get excited about? What do the kids get excited about? What draws you here? Those are things that we need to identify as our strengths. And we need, as a community, when I say we, to be prepared to advocate for our school. Now, I would argue that that's not just in the down economic time where we're going to be advocating for our school. It also has to be during a time of change. The superintendent has shared with the principals that while we're going through this budget adjustment process, there's no better time to really look at the identity of your building, the identity of your school, and start to look at what, again, what makes you great, what are things that people really like, what are some things you can let go of, and how do you start to transform yourself to become better, not change for the sake of change, but change to truly make yourself a better institution. And so, again, the purpose then for us to get together is to understand sort of the identity, the heart and soul of Lake Elmo. So that as we talk about, do we want to keep this or do we want to keep this, you can make informed decisions. You can weigh in on those kinds of things. And then, as we start to say, okay, we want to put together a 3-year plan. I'll talk a little bit more about this as I get into the slideshow. We want to put together a 3-year plan. And we want to bring to Lake Elmo this, or we want to bring to Lake Elmo this. And I'm a little bit hesitant to stand in front of the public and say, okay, we're going to become a K-8 school, or we're going to become a Chinese immersion school. Because surely then people will run out of there and say, hey, we heard Mr. Gorde tell us that this is what we're going to become. What I'm suggesting is we're going to begin a process that will be very public and that will engage all of your voices in that kind of a piece. We're going to take a very close look at the community, the needs of the community, and try to determine what are some components we can add to the school that will make us better than what we already are. My perspective after a year being here is that this is a school, this is a staff that's ready to take on change. This is a staff that's ready to take some things on. I can't tell you exactly what that is. I expect it to come from you all and from the staff participating in that. But I do feel a sense of readiness to sort of take that next big step. Any questions then sort of about the purpose of why you're here? And some of you are like, oh my God, where did this guy come from? Just quickly, my background, I was a high school social studies teacher for many years. The problem there is I don't know when ever to shut up. So I can prattle on and on and on. I promise I'll try to be more concise now as we move forward. You were right. My assistant principal said, if you don't turn it on before you start, it might not work. You might not know if it's not working. And I laughed at it. So when all else fails, we're going to turn it off and then turn it back on, and then we will assume that will work. If not, I think everybody's got the paper version. It's not as exciting, but we're prepared to do that. I would be remiss too if I didn't take just a minute to introduce a newly hired guest that we have here. Mary Anderson is currently the principal at Valley Crossing, and as of July 1, she will be the new elementary director for Stillwater area schools, which means she will have the good fortune of being my new direct supervisor, which I'm very excited about.
As am I.
And makes me really nervous, and I also want to welcome the superintendent.
My boss.
She hasn't been approved yet at the board level, so
I'll be on
be
very
nice
good
to
behavior
her.
tonight.
Don't scare her away.
I don't know why it's doing that. So
I don't know, Steve, is it just put on here?
I'm just gonna start. I'll let you what's wrong with it. There we go.
Magic pen.
Just a little icon, scroll all the way to the bottom. It's a little icon. There's 3 icons. Click right there. Go all the way to the right.
When you get up here and get really nervous, and okay. So we want to talk first about the mission, and we did have the Mission Impossible theme song that we're going to play now. Unfortunately, you saw how good my technology is. It's important to point this out because it's a good place to start. Ensuring students will succeed academically, socially, emotionally, and physically. And we will not give up until this happens. It's something that the staff really believes in and works on an everyday basis to make sure those things happen. So I just want to touch base with a couple of those particular pieces around the mission. Wait, it's going to be my head long. So the social emotional piece of the mission, how does that play out? We have a second step program, which is a violence prevention program. It is taught at each grade level. There are a number of different staff members who are teaching this particular program. The focus is on mediating conflict. It's on developing skills regarding empathy and developing relationships, connecting with the peers that you're working with, and giving kids a set of skills that allow them to successfully interact and work through conflict and different issues that arise naturally in a school setting. Responsive classroom is an opportunity for teachers to really begin to connect with students in a meaningful way. It's an important part and one of the main elements of responsive classroom. There are many, but one of the main elements of responsive classroom is a morning meeting. And it's a 20-minute or half-hour meeting with all of the students where the teacher has an opportunity to really connect with the students for a couple of things. One, to develop the relationship with the students, to help the students develop relationships with each other. And then also just to connect, to see where those students are. I can tell you as a classroom teacher, I appreciated an opportunity to have that meeting because I would take note of where the students are. I could tell right away somebody's feeling really bad, or somebody's really excited about something. And those are important pieces to know as a classroom teacher. Again, you spend a half hour doing it. We really believe that the benefit of that is tremendous because it allows you to really work with those kids and develop their skills despite everything that's piling up on their plate during the day. The Oveus piece is an anti-bullying measure. The school district a year ago adopted an anti-bullying policy. And so we established a very good and clear set of policies to use. We got the materials together to write children up. We communicated the policy. But one of the pieces that we didn't have is the tools for the staff members to receive the students and successfully work them through. In other words, when you have the student who is the bully and you have the student who is the target, there are clearly some ways that research would say you best work with those particular students. The Oveus will give us some of those tools for the staff to best work with the student who's the bully, with the target, and then also start to work within the culture of the school. Those kids that are bystanders who see what are happening are very important to that interaction. And so it's a very sophisticated interaction when those kinds of issues occur, and the Oveus piece will give us the tools to work through that. And the peer mediator program is a very successful program that's been in place here at Lake Elmo for a number of years. And that is kids who are selected at the very beginning of the year, children, who have an opportunity to work throughout the school, in the hallways and on the playground. And very simply what they do is they're trained to help kids work through and mediate their conflict. Conflict is a natural part of life. And sometimes our skills and our ability to resolve that conflict vary depending on our background. It also can vary depending on the day. And so the peer mediators provide the support and insight to help our children work through that. The physical piece, as we know, is critical to the learning that takes place, as is the social emotional. This is an opportunity, again, to publicly acknowledge the work that the PTA did in raising money to put in the track that now sits behind us, and also for the work Paula Harrison did as our PE teacher. I kind of came in and jumped on the coattails of a lot of hard work and a lot of planning that had been taking place for a number of years. We're excited to say we now have a really nice path out in the back where students can use on an everyday basis to help exercise and improve their physical ability. So that's an exciting addition to our program. On the playground, one of the things that we're going to do next year is we're going to start to look at various playground games that can be developed and implemented out on the playground. Now, some of those are the tried and true games that all of you played. Foursquare is already out there, hopscotch, just very simple games like that. Again, Paula Harrison is working with a couple of teachers, and their goal is to research and find the best games. At some point in the summer, we will paint the games on the playground, and then we will create a set of instructions for each of the games and give those to the classroom teachers. The classroom teachers will be responsible for telling the children how to play the game, what the rules are, purpose of the game, and then actually taking some time at the beginning of the year to play the game with them so that when the kids are out there, they'll have an opportunity to interact. Now, there's a fine line, folks, and I understand this. I have 5 children. There's a fine line between allowing children to do that free exploration and to find things and get into the imaginative play, and then creating such a structured environment where they have no opportunities to think for themselves and have opportunities to resolve their own conflict and things like that. We're very aware of that. We really believe that we're going to provide a combination of both of those options. So that those kids who need those opportunities to really freely explore, run around, and just sort of get their wiggles out, will have a chance to do that. For those kids who clearly need a more structured play opportunity, those will be available for them as well. And then as part of the directions that the kids will learn about, we also will have a very simple way of resolving problems. You're playing four squares, the ball in, is it out? It turns into a big conflict. How do you handle that? Well, very simply, at least in a previous school I was, you just rely on rock, paper, scissors. And that's how you resolve the conflict. And however that goes, and you know what? It works great for the kids to be able to do that. The nutrition piece. In 2006, the school district adopted a wellness policy. I'm not going to get into a lot of details about that now, but I believe it's one of the most overlooked policies that the board adopted. And so over the next year plus, we're going to do a lot to build awareness among staff, children, and parents about what that wellness policy includes. There's a physical activity part of it. There's also a nutrition component involved in that. And so we will be talking about those particular pieces. We'll be talking about the kinds of changes that will be taking place in our program because of those particular aspects as the year starts next year. And then there's the academic piece. So we talked about the social emotional, we talked about the physical, then we talked about the academic piece. And I want to talk just a little bit about achievement data. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, please stop me and ask a question. I talk about these things, or I deal with these things all day long, and to me, sometimes it is really simple to go through, but in actuality, when I'm trying to explain it to somebody, it can be very complex. I'm sensitive to that, and so I don't want to mislead anybody or have anybody misunderstand what I'm trying to say. So, what I'm going to talk about in the next two slides, I'm only going to talk about the highest quartile students based on the performance series test. So what does that mean? I'm going to talk about the highest 25% students on the performance series test that we take in the fall of the year. We took the performance series in the fall of 2010, and we took the performance series in the fall of 2011. The performance series assessment is an assessment that allows us to measure growth from one point in time to another point in time. And the measurement I wanted was, and the question I asked was, okay, how do the very brightest kids at Lake Elmo School perform? How do they perform compared to other students in the school district? Well, let me tell you how they perform. Because remember, we're not looking at one score in one point of time. We're talking about how they grew from September 2010 to September 2011. There are three growth tracks. There's a high growth track, a medium growth track, and a low growth track. The yellow bar tells you how much the 25th percentile students across the district grew over 1 year. The blue bar tells you what the Lake Elmo students grew. And so what you can gather from this in math is that our Lake Elmo students, those highest quartile students, grew above the rate of the rest of the students. Now this is an apples to apples comparison. We're comparing Lake Elmo highest quartile students with the district highest quartile students. And so we're at 63% of the students were in the high growth track, 62% in the high growth track for the district. Medium growth track was 33 for Lake Elmo and 34 for the school district. And then the low one was 5. So 5% of those students grew at the lowest level. Yes?
What grade level does this apply?
This is all of the students, thank you for asking, it's all of the students in grades 2nd through 6th. So we put them all together
In math.
in the subject math. Does that make sense? Okay. So now here it is in reading. And again, you can see we're talking about high quartile students, and we're looking at their growth. They have 3 growth tracks, high, medium, and low. The Lake Elmo students grew just a little bit less than in math. I believe it's 62%. District is 61%. Lake Elmo is 33 here, and then again 5 for the reading piece. Any question about that? I'll put it out there quite honestly. Lake Elmo is a diverse community that is made up of a number of different student groups. And sometimes I get the question, hey, Mr. Gorde, we like the diversity at Lake Elmo. We see that you're serving kids that have needs across a very large continuum. But we have kids who are really high achievers. And we're worried because you put resources here, here, and here, that those kids who are the highest achievers don't learn at the same rate as maybe some of their peers across the school district. This information shows you that we're making comparable growth to the rest of the high quartile students across the district. So I would add to this then that you have a tremendous advantage to the rest of the school district because your kids are getting a value-added education by the achievement that they score here. They're doing it in an environment that reflects what the world looks like that they're going to enter very soon. I think that's a tremendous advantage for their elementary school. So now let's take all of the students and let's look at how they score on last year's MCA results. Now somebody might want to raise their hand and say, Mr. Gorde, why can't you show us this year's MCA results? Well, we're almost at a point where we can do that. We took the math tests online, so we do have some preliminary results. And as some of you know, yesterday the state of Minnesota published some of the scores based on math, and we will currently begin to use a new formula that measures growth on the MCA, much like the performance series. And instead of fall to fall, we'll be measuring growth from spring to spring, most likely, is when the students will take that MCA test. And so we'll begin to see how we're doing on those. It's a little bit early now to tell because this is the very first time they're using this specific tool. So I just want to show you, these are all students, grades 2nd through 6th. This is the average number of students who met or exceeded their MCA goals in reading and math. So reading is the gold bar, math is the blue bar. So again, if you compare our students versus the rest of the district, if you compare all of our students to all of the other students in the district, we're 83% in reading. The rest of the district is 88%. We're very close. And at math, we also are very close, just a percentile away. Now, part of my discussion too is to let you know that the school involves itself in a school improvement process on a yearly basis. This school is responsible for working with the new elementary director and turning into the superintendent goals. one of the goals will be addressing specifically our reading scores. So we will be working next year to address our reading performance as a school goal. So we will break down the data in a lot more detail, and you will begin to hear more about that next year as one of our goals. The materials will look a little bit different. The standards are going to look different. The rigor of the reading program next year should begin to go up. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the next school year. So let's preview next year a little bit. And just to have a little bit of fun, and we've got the superintendent here on the hot seat, I put the Lake Elmo signs there, and I said, well, maybe next year will be the year that Lake Elmo gets that nice sign that they've been waiting for. Yes. And it is something that continues to be discussed, and I can tell you it's something in the works. I can't promise you anything for next year, but clearly we want to identify our school, and we want something out front that we can be proud of. So let's get a little bit into the nuts and bolts. It wouldn't be any fun if you came all the way here and you spent an hour in this really hot room and listened to me yap at you without having at least a little bit of information in terms of insider data. Just to give you an idea, last year, this school year, we have 30 sections. When you look at this, there are 28 sections. And you'll notice some changes. You'll notice that second grade is going from currently 5 sections to 2 sections. You'll notice that, I'm sorry, 3 sections. That was rude. 5th grade is going from currently 4 sections to 3. For next year. One of the things that we saw was that we had high class sizes in grades 2, in grades 4, and grade 5. So the superintendent and I have engaged in a conversation back and forth for several weeks now about how best to address that issue. There's a couple responses to that. The first response is that, I'm sorry, can you go back to that one slide? We are going to add a section here, most likely in 5th grade. We're still looking at the numbers, waiting to see where they come in. We're thinking that it may go to 5th grade. If that's the case, you'll notice some of you who know Miss Schindler or wonder about her, she would go in. Oh, here she is. I didn't know you were here.
What do they want here for?
Where she is, why she didn't show up on here, she would be assigned to that 5th grade spot. And then we still have 4th and 2nd grade. We would continue to look at the ability to address class size reduction, either through additional FTE, which I can tell you is very difficult, because when you get to this particular point in time of a budget.
Mr. Gorde, sorry to interrupt. But
Yes.
Can you explain what FTE?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a full-time equivalent. So it would be 1 full-time teacher. Thank you. So we can advocate for 1 full-time teacher, but we can't pull that out of thin air. So in order to produce that, something else has to give. Or we have to look within our current staffing models to find ways to address that class size. So I can tell you that we are going to do a little bit of both. There will be, we will continue to advocate and watch our numbers and see when it's appropriate to bring in another full-time teacher. And I appreciate the support the superintendent has provided us thus far. We also will look at using other staff to determine how best we can lower those class sizes. And there are a number of creative and innovative ways that we can do that with some of the support staff we have, including looking at some of the reading teachers and the math teachers. Now, when we do that, obviously we have to be very careful about the particular pieces that they're leaving behind and what they need to do to work with class size reduction. So that's something that we're working together right now to come up with a contingency for, and I've met a couple of times with those teachers to talk about that particular need. You can buzz through this. So this just gives you a sense of class size. It allows you to kind of see where the district average is, and then where we're below the district average in grades 1 and 5 with that additional FTE, because now we've found Ms. Schindler and replace her. So we're not wondering about her. And then you can see where we're a little bit above the average and still in 2nd and 4th grade. So those remain the challenge areas. So when I talk about class size reduction, when I talk about advocating for appropriate class sizes, those would be the grade levels we'll be addressing. Those would be the areas where we'll try to come together and do some planning to see how best we can meet the needs of the students there. Again, people, remember, when you go through a budget adjustment process like this, it's not unusual or surprising for us to see higher class sizes like that. Yes? It's a good question. It's right at the very highest part of the range. So the range extends to 29 for 2nd grade. 4th grade, I believe it goes to 31 or 30. So we're right on the high end of the range, and that's why we're doing the two things that we're working on right now. One, continuing to watch the numbers and monitor them. Again, remember, these are based on projections. So we need to know how firm these numbers are. So we will continue to monitor those numbers and place the full-time teacher in the right place as it becomes, as the numbers warrant. But we will also continue to look at planning for support of those teachers if their class sizes are higher.
Mr. Gorde?
Yep.
I'm not really sure if this is the appropriate time to ask this, but how is this going to affect children that are in wheelchairs? Like my daughter's getting a power chair, which is going to be significantly larger. If she's going to be in a classroom that has 28 students, where is she going to go?
And extra staff.
Yeah, she also
That
comes
go
with,
along with-
yep, she comes with a private duty nurse, and she also has her para.
Yep. It's a great question. That's one of the pieces we have to look at in terms of the space, the classroom that we use. I think that goes into play when we have that conversation about that additional full-time teacher.
It's still very hopeful.
And then trying to find out, the right formula for all of those pieces to work.
Right.
But clearly that's something that, I think we have to be especially aware of because of the identity of Lake Elmo and the numbers. But that's one of those pieces. That's one of those pieces where I would encourage you to continue to be an advocate for that particular piece, because that's something that we want to be aware of and pay attention to. Yes.
So did I hear you right that there is potential to have one full-time additional teacher that will either go to 2nd or 4th if we get to that point?
Well, there's two options that we're looking at right now. One is additional full-time teacher to you, okay? The other is to look at using support staff to provide class size reduction. And that can come in a variety of different ways. That person might serve as a half-time teacher to do core subjects like math and reading during the day. They may do instruction within that classroom to lower the class size. So there's a lot of different options. At this particular time, again, until we know for certain what those numbers are, we will do a little bit of both in terms of planning and preparing. Yep.
How can we compare to the rest of the schools in the district?
You probably can't see this very well, but the district average is up here. So the second column is the district average, and then it shows you the number above or below the district average. Yep.
The second and fourth grade, are you losing? And I noticed we're missing one teacher that's already currently teaching. Are you not replacing them after they retire? Or are you cutting them?
It's a good question.
You're actually cutting the staff.
Yeah. We had 30 teachers. We're going down to 29. A couple of things have happened. Mrs. Blomquist is retiring, so we have a retirement. And then we also have a teacher, Mrs. Cutler, who will be leaving the classroom and will be going to work as a math intervention instructor. So next year, Mrs. Cutler will be teaching as a math interventionist.
So you're reducing the staff.
Yep. And so at this point, we're losing our math interventionist, one of our math interventionists, who's being replaced by Mrs. Cutler.
But
Yes.
does the district ever look at the challenges that a diverse student population has when you get the class sizes so high? I mean, in second and fourth specifically, there's a lot of diversity to deal with, and I can see being in a second grade classroom, that would just be really, that's my only experience right now.
And that has been the conversation. I think the reason why the FTE came to us is because the superintendent was supportive of us working through a model that provides some support for a diverse student population. Absolutely.
And I hope, and with the superintendent here, it's a unique school, and I think we all love the school for its uniqueness and its diversity and its real world view into where everyone's going to be going after they graduate. I just get concerned with kids getting left behind, kids not being challenged, because there's so many kids in the classroom, and the special needs of every student.
Right.
Aren't being met.
And remember, I will come back to part of the work we need to do is, we're facing the challenges that we are. Part of the reason is we did not pass the levy.
Right.
And so when we talk about that advocacy piece, we really need to understand the impact of that. So I think you're absolutely right, and that's where we really need to channel and harness our support, for our school to be able to make sure we pass that.
Do you want me to add a couple things
Yes.
to that? One of the things in our strategic plan is to develop a new staffing model that takes into account at-risk kids in the building. Right now, the model doesn't do that. And in fact, we gave Lake Elmo one more staff than they would normally generate to acknowledge that. So next fall, we're going to be looking at different models, how we develop staff, and we'll be ready to try that out next year. So the idea was, let's experiment a little bit and give us extra staff that Lake Elmo would not normally get. Now I can tell you, I have the opposite problem on the other end of the district. We have districts that are 1 section size per grade. We have districts that are 5 section sizes. So in a 1 section school, if you have 10 first graders, what's that mean when those first graders become second grade, third graders, and fourth graders? So for me as a superintendent to funnel resources other places, other schools have to change too. And that's part of what's in the works next year too, is what are some exciting new models for schools across the district, and this is Mary's job, so we can use resources better than we do today. So number one, from the school board to myself to the principal, we know this is an issue. Number two, we have some plans in place next year. Our hope is a year from now we come back with some major changes some exciting changes to address all the things you're talking about.
Dr. Lund, may I ask you a question? So in addition to the proposed class sizes that we're seeing here for next school year, can you also speak to the point, or how some of the recent reorg at Central and in our administration, how those repositions and repositioning might impact the different schools, particularly a school where we do have such a large size class numbers?
Yeah, I'm gonna point out something quick and then answer that question. The other thing we have to look at is the region-wide class sizes on the far right. This school district, across the metro, we have the lowest elementary class sizes and the highest junior high and secondary class sizes. And that's for a reason, because we believe that more interventions earlier help kids later on. But there are, of all these class sizes up here, there are only 2 that are above the region class size. So we have to address that. But to answer your question, at the central office, what we're trying to do, when we had to make $6.4 million in reductions, the number one goal was not to impact the classroom unless we had to. There are major changes happening in my office. Half the people that work in my office's job is going to change. And we're a small part of the district. We're cutting over $350,000 just in my office. So we're losing all kinds of support. Now the positive thing is we had 2 assistant superintendents in our district. One of them is not going to have that title next year. The second one is not going to have that title 2 years from now. Makes my job much more difficult, but again, it protects the classroom and preserves resources. So instead, we reorganized to add an elementary director position to only help and focus pre-K through 6 schools. We have another person who's going to focus on 7 to 12 schools. Right now, that same person does pre-K 12. So when we have issues like we're talking tonight, it's a very difficult thing. So I think we're going to have more help, more support, more attention for elementary schools. And a year from now, I'm excited to see what the outcome might be. So,
Yes.
You didn't want me to talk at all, did you?
Just out of curiosity
The
for
meeting after
education
the meeting.
itself, is there a place where we could get class size ratios in the other schools, elementary schools in the district? I'm just curious where Lake Elmo sits with class ratio sizes in comparison to other schools.
You can do that. I just would really be cautious of the average, because I got a couple schools up north I just mentioned that might have 10 per class. And you'd be better off looking at averages, throwing those 2 schools out, I think. Because if every school was the same size, averages are really good to look at, but we don't have that. So I would really caution you to look at the averages a little bit, but we can go back and look at that.
Dr. Lund, has there been any notice or attention drawn to where the levy did pass and possibly diverting funds to where the levy did pass and possibly
Well, the levy failed.
reallocating
The levy
where?
didn't pass.
Well, yeah, I realize that.
That's all that matters. But what I hear you say is, should the areas that the levy got more votes.
Lake Elmo did, the community passed the.
But here's the problem with that. It's really unfair because who voted?
Right.
You know, that's not fair. I'm just going to pick a school X who more community members voted no. That's not very fair. And we are a school district together, so.
But is it fair to punish us for a community that supports us? I mean, in the same token, I guess I was just curious on it.
I think that's a path the school district doesn't want to go down, because this is why. You're asking me to do the opposite here too. The principals asked me to take resources from other schools and bring them here because you have a higher risk population. Think about that. So those parents are going to say, no, don't do that. So I think you got to be careful about making statements. I would never do that. What we want to do is meet the needs of all kids wherever they are. But we are a school district. We're a family. We are not going to single those things out. And the bottom line is there's only one vote that mattered. Did it pass or fail? And it did not pass. And I could talk about that for another hour. And, I'll just throw something out. Do you know what percentage of our parents voted in the levy? 43%. That's a problem. If 60% of people would have voted, that happened in other districts, all 3 questions would have passed. So there's bigger other issues that we need to focus attention to.
Yes.
So, let's say there's lots of move-ins over the summer in grades 2 and 4. What happens to those class sizes? Do they continue to get bigger, or will another teacher be allowed to come in those
No,
grades?
we watch those on almost a weekly basis, the numbers that are coming in and out. And I will have a conversation with with the district administrators. Similar, a similar scenario played out last year in third grade. We went into the summer with third grade with 3 teachers at third grade, and we watch the numbers coming in and out. And when we realized the numbers were going to be at a certain point, then an FTE was allocated to meet those class sizes. So
is there a certain number that happens at? Because, if you say 30, 31, I mean, we're like one student away.
Yep, we're close. We're within 5 students in both grades of meeting that.
So
2 months from now,
if
that
we
could
need it, does that mean-
change. You could have it. Here's the issue, folks. You got to remember, we get our money from the state by per pupil. And if we were to swing the other way and lose 30 kids, we'd be in a world of trouble. So we have to be very careful. So we're trying to put the resources where we need now for the classroom, but be completely open to add things later on. And it's a very sticky wicket. And in fact, you may not know this, the state does not count an elementary student the same as a secondary student. So to the fairness questions, secondary kids generate 1.2 FTs, or WADMs. Elementary is like 0.8. We divert a lot of our secondary resources to the elementary schools to be proactive too. So it's just a very complicated process. But we hope to be adding staff a couple months from now. But to Stephen's point, sometimes we don't know the first day of school who's going to be here and who's not, which is a challenge too.
Other questions? Yes.
And I know this is totally off topic, and so I won't go into this anymore, but it's more for, I guess, the superintendent. But is there a plan to look at some of the lower population schools? I know I've heard a lot about this on and off through meetings I've attended, that when we have low populations in certain schools and then we're overpopulated in others, kind of coming up with a plan to even the playing field amongst the school. I know that we're limited by real estate and buildings and certain things like that, but
That's what I was talking about a couple minutes ago.
so that'll be kind of addressed then.
Yep. We could do boundary changes all over again.
Yes.
That's how you fix that.
I'm sorry, yes?
I'm not going to do it.
It was very painful and emotional, and people worked very hard on it, and it doesn't look here like anything moved or changed.
I couldn't hear the first part.
It's the question about last year's process and the bond. You're right, about roughly 200 students across the district moved. And those of you who followed that process know that there were several plans that would move a lot more kids for a host of different reasons. The board, selected, the path that they did. But I also will remind you, this was a school 2 years ago, of 700 and almost 80 kids, and now we're at 700. So, it did provide some relief.
The only way to fix the class sizes is to have different boundaries for different grades people. It's very complicated because you can't determine the size of your grades in every building across the district by the same boundaries. So this happens at districts across the state. I think it's magnified for us because of the budget issue.
Thank you. Yes?
Would there be any way to, it looks to me like we might need to inform our second graders are we having open enrollment now in second grade or is it closed because we're already way over? What's happening so that we could get to the magical number to have appropriate class sizes in those?
Yep. Right now they'll watch those numbers very closely, and like I said, there'll be a weekly conversation on where we are. We're actually, I think the last time I checked last week, we're down just a little bit in second grade from what the projections are, and there are no. They will receive those kids if it's an open enrollment or if it's an alternate from one of the other areas in Stillwater Schools, one of the other school areas, they'll put them on as an alternate, but they put them on a waiting list. And we don't have anybody on that waiting list right now. Yes?
So there is a magical number then,
Yes.
you're not just letting everybody
No.
in like
No.
previous years?
Right. Yep.
So how many are you letting in for next year? Open enrollments?
Well, there would be none because of the numbers we have in second grade. So we do it grade by grade because, you know, in sixth grade, we're actually down a little bit. Yes?
So you've been talking about advocating and becoming the voice and such for these types of issues. You're aware of it, he's aware of it. What do we do as parents to express our frustration with the situation?
Well, I think there's a lot of things you can do. Number one, it's building awareness. Number two, it's communicating the facts. It's providing the information and having that set up. I think what I would like to do is set up a way so that people who are concerned can call me directly and I can give them information. Or, you know, maybe we can use the website to update information on that. So people who want to know that can have that information. I also invited Mike Potacek. Mike is a school board member. The school board members, and if I say this wrong, correct me, the school board members have been assigned different elementary schools. Mike Potacek is the school board representative for Lake Elmo Elementary School. You're always welcome to call or contact him. And he, while he couldn't be here tonight, is committed to meeting with me personally at another time so I can go over all of this with him. Yes?
So is there, following up on Chris's question, is there anything that, you know, I mean, blitz them, our school board members with emails and letters and things, does it matter? Or is it simply the numbers are what they are until we get to third and fifth grade?
Well, I think we have to watch the numbers at this point and really be aware and pay attention to those. But I do think we have a, you know, I do think we have a unique story that needs to be heard. I mean, your question is a really good one. Your point is really a good one. Lake Elmo is different. You know, I think the superintendent acknowledged that there's an awareness of that at the leadership level. And, you know, their goal is to have a staffing model for the, you know, the 2013-2014 school year that addresses that. As we transition to this next school year, 2012-2013, you know, we're going to have to work through some of the numbers pieces to make sure we can get through that.
But I would like to say, though, I don't think it hurts ever to contact your school board. I think that there's a lot of things that make us in a unique building in which many people within Stillwater are not aware of. And so I would say, I mean, I agree that we have to watch the numbers, but it's still politics too. So it doesn't hurt, I think, to contact school board members and to make our voice heard.
And always, they're always happy to talk to you.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And isn't it more, it's not really about the board members at this point. We had 43 parents, or community, you know, school parents vote. We need to talk to our neighbors and our kids' friends, and there needs to be a marketing thing, and there's a huge advantage to us not going and running up against another levy this next season for the politics. But now we have, what, a year and a half? So that's actually my question is, do we have a marketing ploy, so to speak, across the district like we did in Lake Elmo? Because quite honestly, the stuff that you guys did at Spirit Night and all that was a huge difference. All those little kids with those stickers on it, that made a difference.
Right. It's interesting because tonight all of the principals from across the district met with a marketing director, and she will be coordinating the efforts to look at, you know, what's appropriate. And looking ahead, they now are in the process of developing an 18-month plan for passing a levy. So those pieces are being addressed.
And that's why we need to be here tonight to get educated so we can say, yeah, that's why that's happening. Hey, they're getting out there.
Yes.
That's where we need to be the voice. Because we don't have a choice. The levy didn't pass, this is what we got.
Right.
Now we know, and now we can tell other people. And trust me, my kid is the one in the 28. So I'm terrified for him because I work in the classrooms and I see how intense these poor teachers work. But there's not, I mean, we have to be that advocate as much as we tried in the community. We've got to get out side of Lake Elmo, we gotta, you know, and do it as a community.
Well, let me add one other
In that
thing.
way.
The current levy expires in another year. Think what's gonna happen to those numbers if we have to cut $10 million, people. To your point, I agree with you 100%. For the board's sake, they don't have the money. They can't control the sizes. So I'd really advocate